Hello everyone, welcome to CNA, the daily newspaper analysis. So today we have got the following topics in the list. So let's discuss. The first one going with the preventive detention. So when I say about the preventive detention, so there is a respective case, okay? तो यहाँ पे क्या है कि like preventive detention in 2021 saw a rise of around 23.7%. Okay, तो 23.7% क्या हुआ? बढ़ा है. From where? From the last year. Okay, because we have seen that with over 1.1 lakh people being placed under preventive detention, and this has been reported by whom? The NCRB, that is the National Crime Records Bureau. Okay, so ये preventive detention होता क्या है? It refers to the detention of a person who has not yet committed a crime but is deemed to threat to a law and order by the authorities. Okay, so we can see that this preventive detention is a type of detention when some is not yet done. और अगर एक क्राइम करने के बाद उनको हम लोग उठाते हैं, उनको हम लोग डिटेन करते हैं, अरेस्ट करते हैं, तो उसको क्या बोलते हैं हम लोग? प्यूनिटिव डिटेंशन. So various provisions are involved for preventive detention. Supposedly the Gunda Act, supposedly the Prevention of Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1988. Okay, for all these respective categories, even for various number of other detentions, you can see that such number of preventive detention cases are directly in concern. Okay, so in other words, preventive detention is an action taken by the administration on the grounds of suspicion that some wrong actions may be done by a person concerned, which will be prejudicial to the state. So if I see preventive detention in India, so a police officer can arrest an individual without orders from a magistrate and without any warrant if he gets any information that such an individual can commit an offense. And preventive detention law under 1950 directly say that any person could be arrested and detained if his freedom would endanger the security of the country, foreign relations, public interest, or otherwise necessary for the country. And also, if I say about the UAPA Act of 1968, within the ambit of UAPA law, the Indian state could declare any organization illegal and could imprison anyone for interrogation if the said organization or person critic or question is directly a threat to the India's sovereignty. So today, what can be the difference between a preventive detention and an arrest? So an arrest is done when a person is charged with a crime. मैंने जो बोला था punitive detention वाला. In case of preventive detention, a person is detained or is restricted so as not to deteriorate the law and order situation. And Article 22 of the Indian Constitution provides protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. So today, if I see about the rights of an arrested person, तो मैंने जैसे बोला Article 22. Okay, so Article 22 में directly बोला गया है in sub clause 1-2 that a person can be arrested and detained without being informed, and like a person who is arrested cannot be denied to be defended by a legal practitioner. Every person who has been arrested would be produced before a nearest magistrate within 24 hours. तो ये arrest के time में. Also, the custody of the detained person cannot be beyond the said period by the authority of the magistrate. But there are some of the exceptions for preventive detention. और ये exceptions कहाँ लिखा गया है? Article 22 clause 3. Which says that the above safeguards are not available to the following persons who at time being an enemy aligned, that is a foreigner, or if a person is arrested under a certain law made for the purpose of preventive detention. So therefore, if I say about the constitutional provisions, it is extraordinary that the framers of the Indian Constitution who suffered most because of preventive detention laws did not hesitate to give constitutional sanctity. B.R. Ambedkar of that time was directly of the opinion that the freedom of the individual should not supersede the interest of the state. And he also stated that the independence of the country was in the state of infancy, and in order to save it, preventive detention was very much essential. So today, why there is a criticization of the preventive detention? Because of its arbitrariness. Okay, because of the violation of its rights. Because quite often there is no trial up to 3 months and no periodic review and no legal assistance for the detained person. Also, because of preventive detention, we can see various number of abuses because it does not provide any procedural protections, such as to reduce the detainee's vulnerability to torture and discriminatory treatments. Also, it's a tool for suppression because in the absence of proper safeguards, preventive detention has been misused, particularly against the Dalits as well as the minorities. Okay, so therefore, you can see even the Apex Court, that is the Supreme Court, in various cases says about that preventive detention is a necessary evil only to prevent public disorder. Also, it said that states should not arbitrarily resort to preventive detention. So in such point of time where such number of ordinary laws could also make out preventive detention is directly used by the law agencies, law enforcement agencies, which directly shows a form of arbitrariness. So therefore, having such kind of act has a restraining influence on the antisocial and subversive elements. India is a large country. And also we know that India has got a many separatist tendency against the national security and integrity existed. And the number of persons detained in this act is not very large as due attention is made before preventive detention. And the state should also have very effective powers to deal with the acts in which citizens involved in hostile activities, espionage, coercion, terrorism, etc. इसीलिए हम लोग को वो भी बहुत ज्यादा हम लोग का important है. Okay, so therefore यहाँ पे देख सकते हो about the look at the number of preventive detentions under the National Security Act over 5 years. तो बहुत सारे बेसिस पे यहाँ पे उठाए जाते हैं. 2017 में कितना है, 18 में कितना है, 19 में कितना है, डिटेन कितना गया था, रिलीज कितना किया गया. बाकी लोग देखो कितना डिटेन से लेकर रिलीज तक. यहाँ पे देखो 741 डिटेन एंड रिलीज कितना 410 ओनली. तो यहाँ पे बाकी सब जेल के हवा खा रहे. तो इसीलिए यहाँ पे क्या हो गया, इट्स अ राइज ऑफ अराउंड 23.7%. तो हम लोग ने एक साल में 1.1 लाख पीपल वर डायरेक्टली प्लेस अंडर प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन. ये हम लोग का हाल है अभी इन द कंट्री ऑफ इंडिया. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट पे आते हैं. मर्डर्स ऑफ सीनियर्स. ओके, सो व्हेन आई से अबाउट द मर्डर्स ऑफ सीनियर्स, इस जनरली इसके लिए एक टर्म यूज करते हैं, उसको हम लोग बोलते हैं सेनिसाइड और इसको बोलते हैं जेरोंटिसाइड. तो इफ आई सी अबाउट the senicide or geronticide, it is what? It is the killing of an elderly or their abandonment to death. तो यहाँ पे लिखा गया killing of the elderly or their abandonment to death. ठीक है, तो we have got various philosophical views associated with this. Pythagorean doctrine held that all creatures were being punished by the gods who imprisoned the creature's souls in a body. Okay, and it is thus an attempt to alter the punishment which is seen as a direct violation of the God's will. Today, if I see about some of the religious views, the societies of antiquity viewed suicide and euthanasia is very differently from modern culture. Okay, सबको पता होगा euthanasia क्या है. Euthanasia क्या होता है? It's directly the practice of intentionally ending the life to relieve pain and suffering. ठीक है, so if I see about the euthanasia, we can see various factors such as better medical and psychological insight, which have affected contemporary society views of suicide and euthanasia. So today, if I by culture see in our country, okay, India में तो होता है, लेकिन एक है हेरूली, where a Germanic tribe, okay, एक Germanic tribe है हेरूली बोल के. इनका क्या है? During the migration period of them, they directly placed the sick and elderly on a tall stalk of wood and stabbed them to death before settling the pyre alight. तो यहाँ पे एक बड़ा सा एक स्टॉक पे ये लोग क्या करेंगे, एल्डरली को यहाँ पे प्लेस करेंगे. ओके, बड़ा सा एक स्टॉक पे ऐसे करके स्टॉक होता है, यहाँ पे एल्डरली को प्लेस करेंगे, उसको फिर मारते हैं, मार के उसको फिर जला देते हैं. ठीक है, तो ये हेरूली एक प्रैक्टिस था वहां पे इन जर्मनी. ओके, इफ आई सी अबाउट इन इंडिया, इन द साउदर्न इंडियन स्टेट ऑफ तमिलनाडु, द इलीगल प्रैक्टिस ऑफ सेनिसाइड दैट इज लोकली नोन एज थलाई कुथल, इसको बोलते हैं हम लोग, यहाँ पे लिखे हो थलाई कुथल, and it is said to occur dozens or perhaps hundreds of times each year. ये illegally होता है, legal नहीं है, illegal. And it seems as if the old ones have accepted her deaths already, as they also think that they have become a burden for their children. Today, I can directly say about a story about a lady from the village Subama, that is in Tamil Nadu only. So वो बोलते हैं कि like what else can they do if they see their parents directly suffering for such? Okay, so वो लोग इतना भी economically well off नहीं है. So what they can do? So at least they are offering their parents a peaceful death by at least making them die. And therefore it is an act of dignity, because living like a piece of log for years in disrespect for the elderly themselves more than it is for us. And the elderly choose to be offered thalai kuthal so that they could at least relieve from the pains and from the very difficulties that they directly found during the time of their elder positions. So meanwhile, this old custom is replaced or reinforced by some of the lethal injections, and some old people might escape the unconstitutional customs. So the practice of thalai kuthal is very much unconstitutional in nature, as no one in India is allowed to commit suicide and even in euthanasia. Only passive euthanasia is allowed. Therefore, there is no way thalai kuthal killing oldest parents can be practiced in our country. Okay, so you can see such number of things. So even if I go to some of the other Indians to the east of this, there are nomads and eats raw flesh, and they are called as what? Padai. P-A-D-A-E-I. Search करके देख लेना Google में Padai. And it is to say that their custom that when any one of their fellows, whether man or woman, is sick, a man's closest friend kill him, saying that if wasted by disease, he will be lost to them as meat. तो देख लो इन लोग का हालत. So though he denies that he is sick, they will not believe him, but kill and eat him. When a woman is sick, she is put to death like the man, by the women who are her close acquaintances. As for one that has come to old age, they sacrifice him and feast on his flesh. But not many reach this reckoning, for before that everyone who falls ill, they kill. So ये हालत है in this padai. Okay, in this padai. So therefore you can see about such number of things, activities which is directly going in the society. Okay, और ये ऐसा नहीं है कि खाली इंडिया में, जर्मनी में. You can see this even in countries like, or developed countries like Japan. Okay, तो वहां पे वो बोलते हैं उबासुते, UBASUT, उबासुते. Okay, और बहुत ज्यादा देखोगे even you can see in some of the developed nations or some of the very peaceful nations like Scandinavian countries, Nordic, this Nordic areas, यहाँ पे देखोगे तुम लोग, सर्बिया में देखोगे, ग्रीस में देखोगे, रोम में देखोगे. So in every areas you could see such number of things directly happening. और यहाँ पे जैसे मैंने तमिलनाडु वाला बताया हूँ थलाई कुथल, तो इसलिए यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, तमिलनाडु टॉप द मर्डर ऑफ सीनियर्स इन 2021. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे बहुत सारा हम लोग का ये कंडीशंस होता है जिसके लिए किलिंग्स करते हैं, सोशल कंडीशंस होते हैं. ओके, यंग जनरेशन को ज्यादा एलिवेट करते हैं, नेग्लेक्ट सीनियर सिटीजंस. ओके, फाइनेंशियल इकोनॉमिक डिपेंडेंस एंड ऑल दिस थिंग्स. फिर हेल्थ डिसेबिलिटीज, ये कौन देखता रहेगा, उससे अच्छा मार दो. ओके, तो इसीलिए ये रेस्पेक्टिव न्यूज है. ठीक है, ये थलाई कुथल बहुत ज्यादा याद रखना, कभी पूछ देता है. ठीक है, चलो. ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग. तो ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग क्या होता है? ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग, टुडे वी कुड डायरेक्टली सी दैट द ट्रैफिकिंग इज डायरेक्टली कमिंग इन लाइमलाइट. ओके, ट्रैफिकिंग आजकल बहुत ज्यादा हो रहा है इंडिया में. ओके, सो इफ आई say about the responses of the human trafficking in our country, so today we could see that the human trafficking is a very immoralized act, okay, where various number of violations of the human rights is directly coming into prominence. ठीक है, so we could see that हमारे इसके लिए बहुत सारा reasons भी है. Okay, तो इस human trafficking में forced labor, forced begging, selling children, child soldiers, forced marriage, removal of organs, sexual exploitation, तो ये सब बहुत सारा हम लोग का issues in this respective human trafficking. So human trafficking क्या है? Also called trafficking in persons formed is directly a part of the modern day slavery, which directly involves the illegal transport of the individuals by force or deceptions for the purpose of this activities, जो यहाँ पे दिया गया है. ठीक है, so even we could see that the reasons of this increased trafficking is due to the capitalize on competing crisis and the diversion of the resources to pandemic response efforts, which has resulted in an ideal environment for human trafficking to flourish and evolve. So if I categorize the countries on the basis of this evolvement, तो यहाँ पे हम लोग का 3 tier system है. Tier 1 countries में कौन कौन आता है? Okay, the countries whose government fully complied with the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. और ये TVPA क्या है? Trafficking Victims Protection Act. ये US law on human trafficking है. So US, UK, Australia, Bahrain, South Korea, they are some of the countries in the Tier 1. Okay, Tier 2 countries में कौन आता है? Tier 2 countries do not fully comply with the TVPA's minimum standards, but are making some significant efforts to bring them into compliance. Okay, so India किसमें आता है? India Tier 2 में आता है. Okay, तो ये directly जो TVPA है, that is the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, जो USA का law body है of human trafficking, India directly उसको accept नहीं करता. ठीक है, so if I see about the Tier 3 countries whose government do not fully comply with the minimum standards, हम लोग तो partially comply करते भी है, वो लोग comply नहीं करते, तो ये सब कौन आएंगे? देख लो कौन सा आएंगे. अफगानिस्तान आ जाएंगे, बर्मा आ जाएंगे, चाइना आ जाएगा, नॉर्थ कोरिया आ जाएगा, ईरान आ जाएगा, रशिया आ जाएगा. तो ये देख लेना. ठीक है, so there are also some of the few special cases like Yemen, एकदम टोन वार बस वार ही चलता रहता है, वहां पे सब खलास हो गया है. So where the civil conflict and humanitarian crisis makes gaining information difficult, तो ये स्पेशल केसेस भी है. Also we have got relevance law in our country, in the context of our country. So article 23 and 24 of the Constitution of India directly says what? Prohibition of the human trafficking and beggar. और आर्टिकल 24 क्या कहते हैं? आर्टिकल 24 फॉरबिड्स एम्प्लॉयमेंट ऑफ द चिल्ड्रन बिलो द एज ऑफ 14 ईयर्स ऑफ एज। फिर ऊपर से हम लोग का आईपीसी जो सेक्शन 370 और 370A के तहत इज डायरेक्टली काउंटर द मैनर्स ऑफ द ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग इंक्लूडिंग ट्रैफिकिंग ऑफ चिल्ड्रन, सेक्सुअल एक्सप्लॉयटेशन, स्लेवरी, फोर्स लेबर, ये सब करते हैं। Also, the section 372 and 373 is deals with selling and buying of girls for the purpose of prostitutions. तो ये सब भी है हम लोग का। फिर हम लोग का लेजिस्लेशन है दो तीन, जैसे दिस इमोरल ट्रैफिक प्रिवेंशन एक्ट 1956 which is directly to prevent the commercial sexual exploitation. फिर prohibition of child marriage act, bonded labor system, child labor, okay, transplantation of human organs. फिर पोक्सो आता है, protection of child from sexual offenses, ठीक है, तो ये सब भी है। फिर हम लोग ने अपना मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम अफेयर्स के तहत हम लोग ने एंटी ट्रैफिकिंग नोडल सेल बैठा के रखा है, ओके, व्हिच कुड डायरेक्टली फॉलो अप द एक्शंस टेकन बाय द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स टू कम्बैट द क्राइम ऑफ ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग। फिर हम लोग का एक एंटी ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग यूनिट है, होम अफेयर्स के अंदर ही आता है, ठीक है। ऑल्सो वी आर वेरी मच ओके और वी आर वेरी मच रेटिफाइड हम लोग ने क्या किया है, यूनाइटेड नेशंस कन्वेंशन ऑन ट्रांसनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम्स। सो ये सब हम लोग का एक कोलैबोरेशन है। So today, if there is a very good need to step up technical assistance and strengthen the cooperation to support all countries to protect their victims and bring criminals to justice. And the capacity building of the police along with that of the NGOs is necessary to tackle up the menace of human trafficking. So there is a need to ensure proper data sharing internally in an administration or between agencies like police or the NGOs or between the different countries as well. Because मैं यहाँ पे एक कमिटी का नाम लेना चाहता हूँ about the Justice Burma Committee, who had recommended a census of the missing children, and government needs to take some preventive steps such as educating children, making people aware of the society. तो ये सब हम लोग का एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फिनोमेना है with respect to human trafficking. Okay, चलो नेक्स्ट पे आते हैं। सब lineages of monkeypox. तो यहाँ पे क्या है, we directly said about that this monkeypox. ओके ये एक बहुत डेडली डिजीज हो गया है, ठीक है, आज ये बहुत ज्यादा फैल रहा है, ठीक है। सो मंकीपॉक्स वायरल इन्फेक्शन इज बीइंग वेरी मच रिपोर्टेड इन वेरी सेवरल कंट्रीज एंड गिवन द इंक्रीजिंग रिपोर्ट्स ऑफ द केसेस ऑफ monkeypox which is totally a non-endemic countries today, even the Ministry of Health is directly releasing guidelines on the management of monkeypox disease. तो अगर मैं monkeypox disease के बारे में बोलूं तो it was first discovered in 1958 when 2 outbreaks of a pox-like disease caused in the colonies of monkeys kept for research. Hence the name monkeypox. So ये monkeypox किससे होता है? Is caused by the monkeypox virus. Okay, a member of the orthopox virus genus in the family of poxviridae. 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 So it's क्या है? It's a viral zoonosis with symptoms similar to those seen in the past smallpox patients, although it is clinically less severe as compared to the smallpox. So with the eradication of the smallpox around कितना हुआ था 1980 के टाइम and the subsequent cessation of the smallpox vaccination, monkeypox has emerged as the most important orthopox virus for public health. And it primarily occurs in Central and West African countries, often in proximity to the tropical rainforest, which has been increasingly appearing in some of the urban areas. Because animal host includes a range of rodents and non-human primates. To animal, zoonotic transmission can occur from direct contact with the blood, body fluids, or cutaneous or mucosal lesions of the infected animals. So today, if I see about the monkeypox directly transmitted to humans through close contact with an infected person or animal, so monkeypox is usually a self-limited disease, which usually symptoms lasting from 2 to 4 weeks. Yes, severe cases can occur, but the case fatality ratio is around 3 to 6% in the recent times. So today, if you see about the incubation period, that is the interval from infection to the onset of the symptoms, is usually ranging from 6 to 13 days. And it can range from around 5 to 21 days also. So the invasion period, okay, इसमें क्या होता है, फीवर होता है, इंटेंस हेडेक होता है, ठीक है, लिम्फ नोड्स का स्वेलिंग होता है, बैक पेन होता है, मसल एक्स होता है, तो ये सब होता है. And lastly, we can see about the skin getting eruptions usually begins within 1 to 3 days of the appearance of the fever. So today, these are very much distinct genetic clades of the monkeypox virus can be seen in the Central African nations, near to the Congo Basin, and in some of the West African nations. Okay, so therefore, today, even a new sublineage of monkeypox directly emerged. And this is directly a concerning element with respect to the monkeypox. Because vaccination against smallpox was demonstrated through severe observation studies to be about 85% effective in preventing monkeypox. And does prior smallpox vaccination may result in milder illness? So यहाँ पे हम लोगों को क्या करना चाहिए? Continuous surveillance will be key to preventing future attacks of the disease. Because the disease is predominantly affected male aged between 30 to 43 years of age, which is directly a working population, which is directly a demographic dividend. Supposedly, if a country has a good demographic dividend, that means what? That means he has got the people belonging to this years of age. So though we consider it to be 15 to 55, but 30 to 43 is directly coming in between the 15 to 55. So therefore, to not go for a good number of cases, today we have to directly see about that what is the type so as to prevent such number of diseases. So an antiviral agent which is known as tecovirimat that was developed for smallpox, which was licensed by European medicine agencies. It is based on the data in animal and human studies. But ये आज भी widely available नहीं जो tecovirimat मैं बोला है. So this tecovirimat is directly not very much widely available today, and therefore we have slowed down the vaccination processes. ठीक है, तो ये अभी से एक नया सब lineage आया है of the monkeypox also. So this could be very much more rapid as because it directly is very much of contaminating in nature. ठीक है, तो ये न्यूज़ में था. नेक्स्ट पे आते हैं. Difference in inflation across states. So if I see about the difference in inflations, so today we could see that inflation is directly defined as an increase in the price of the most everyday or common goods and services such as food, clothing, housing, recreation, transportation, etc. तो ये recently news पे क्या है? Because we can see that the retail inflation which peaked in April at around 7.75%, which is directly an 8-year high, ये अभी डिप हो गया कहाँ पे? जुलाई अगस्त के टाइम. It is around 6.7% today. However, we can see that consumers continue to experience over 7% inflation in some of the 11 states and UTs. आज भी 7% inflation हम लोग का continuous, okay, which is directly from the time period, which was very much higher around April, 7.7%, 7.79%. So how inflation is across the states of India today? So if I see about the consumer price index inflation, which exceeded around 6%, तो ये अभी average around 6.8% चल रहा है. Okay, but we can see that in various states, be it the Telangana, West Bengal, okay, so even in Sikkim, the smaller state, ये लोग 8% से ऊपर जा रहे हैं, जो एवरेज हम लोग का जो 7% है उससे बहुत काफी ज्यादा है. So today if we see about states like Maharashtra and Haryana, who have an average inflation rate of around 7.7%, followed by Madhya Pradesh around 7.5%. Assam का देख लो 7.37%. ओके, उसके बाद उत्तर प्रदेश आता है, उसके बाद गुजरात, राजस्थान का अराउंड 7.1% आता है. इवन तो ये एक एवरेज इन्फ्लेशन रेट है. लेकिन किसी किसी का क्या है, ये 7% ठीक ठाक है, किसी किसी का लो इन्फ्लेशन रेट है. Supposedly if I tell about Kerala 4.8%, Tamil Nadu 5%, Punjab 5.3%, Delhi मान लो 5.56%. So they are directly, even Meghalaya 3.84%, Goa 3.66%. So average inflation is directly below 4%. So what are the reasons for variations in this inflation rate occurs across the states? तो यहाँ पे पहला आता है food inflation as a major contributor, because inflation in food prices is a significant contributor for states' inflation experiences. And states that don't grow a lot of crops experience higher food inflation as a result of rising transportation cost. And since food is given more weight in the CPI, that is the consumer price index for rural areas, those with the predominance of the rural areas also experience higher inflations. इसके बाद आता है हम लोग का क्या, fuel inflation. पहला तो मैंने क्या बोला, food inflation, इसके बाद fuel inflation आता है. Because today we see the diesel prices were negative for the very first time since November 2019, while overall transportation fuel inflation dropped to a 32-month low of around 0.3%. Okay, and it made a difference that several states directly cut their fuel taxes. इसके बाद क्या है, inequitable industrial growth, फिर unregulated stocking and hoarding. So for all these purposes, today we see that in addition to other strategies like interest rate hikes, trade barriers to cool prices, we can see that what is pushing inflation higher or lower in some of the states compared to the others should be very much considered in a very rapid. And to identify and manage the pricing triggers that might not be caused by global headwinds, but rather some of the local issues. And here the center and the states should coordinate directly to tackle the inflation in every states. Because अगर सब स्टेट्स में कंट्रोल में रहेंगे तो टोटल इंडिया का जो इन्फ्लेशन रेट है वो भी कंट्रोल में रह सकता है. ओके, सो दिस वाज अबाउट द इन्फ्लेशन. नेक्स्ट पे आते हैं लास्टली विद एन एडिटोरियल, ओके, दैट सेज अबाउट Gorbachev, macroeconomics and Gandhi. Okay, तो यहाँ पे क्या है, we even recently discussed in some of the recent news about Mikhail Gorbachev, that is the last president of the Soviet Union who passed away recently. Okay, so he was a very active Russian politician who belongs to the Communist Party, and he is directly claimed to be a greater reformer and a liberator. And under his new policy of glasnost, मैंने बोला था, which is known as openness, the freedom of expression, press, broadcasting were likely expanded. Also under this Gorbachev policy of perestroika, which means restructuring, उसका बस दो वर्ड है, one is the glasnost और दूसरा क्या है, perestroika. Glasnost मतलब क्या है, openness है, और perestroika मतलब restructurings. So the first modest attempts to democratize the Soviet political systems were undertaken, and some limited free market mechanisms began to be introduced. And in foreign affairs, Gorbachev from the beginning cultivated warmer relations and trade with the developed nations of both the West as well as the East. And he directly worked for democratization and decentralization of Russia's political system. So today, how is the present day Russia? In terms of geopolitical, we can see NATO is expanding eastwards and Russia has Ukraine as its battleground. So the geopolitical context. If I say about the political, the return of authoritarianism under Vladimir Putin could be witnessed. Economy, Russia has not recovered from the shock it got from Boris Yeltsin's Big Bang capitalization imposition by the US economists. Between the Big Bang capitalist reforms of the Russian economy in 1991 and 1984, life expectancy fell from 64 to 57 years. Recently, वहां पे केस भी सुने होंगे कि जो महिलाएं ज्यादा बच्चा पैदा करेंगे, अराउंड 10 sons, 10 child, so they will be awarded. ये सब देख लो, क्योंकि वहां पे क्या हो गया, लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी गिर रहा है वहां पे. And the Russian deaths were caused by the imposition of an economic ideology that claimed that everyone will be better off when the state is pushed back and the economy is deregulated and capitalist spirits are let loose. So we can see every issues associated with this respective element of macroeconomics in this respective country. तो यहाँ पे अभी गांधी के बारे में क्यों बोल रहे हैं? It says about Gandhi's economics. Gandhi's economics क्या था? The new models of cooperative governance are required to realize the promise of humanity's shared commons. Mahatma Gandhi's calculus is guided by the principles of what? Human rights, community management, equity, ethics, and the fair sharing of powers and resources, which directly aids in realizing the promise of our commons and provide Purna Swaraj to all the citizens. तो गांधी का इकोनॉमिक्स और गोर्बाचेव का इकोनॉमिक्स थोड़ा बहुत कोरिलेशन करते हैं. Because today we know if they are following a socialistic mindset, even we know that our respective leaders like Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, they are very much inclined towards the socialistic ideas, which takes the form of communist ideas by the Gorbachevs. तो इसीलिए ये particular change news पे है, because today we could see that a resource ideological battles is directly going on and building up between the West as well as the East. Okay, so the ideological war which directly affects Russia also. Because today you see the 20th century which directly witness ideological battles among economics, communalism, socialism, capitalism, where the capitalist model is founded the ideology of two fundamental ideas, property rights over human rights. Okay, and in some period of time we could directly see that the democratic principles of human rights requires that every human being black, white, billionaire, have an equal vote in the governance. So today if I see about the capitalism, the socialism, the communalism, everything has got its own phenomenal activities. So therefore, directly to shift from one place to the other, from one theory to the other, to one ideology to the other, requires a humongous amount of time. And this change may not be good for a respective economy. So इसीलिए यहाँ पे Gorbachev का macroeconomics and even Gandhi's economies are directly considered into problems. Because Gandhi's economics directly considered to realize the humanity's shared commons, be it human rights, be it community management, be it equity, be it ethics, be it fair sharing of power and resources, everything. ये जितने भी यहाँ पे मिलेंगे, ये आज में यूएसए में भी मिलेगा, ये रशिया में भी मिलेगा, ये कोंगो में भी, लाइक इन दिस एरिया ऑफ अफ्रीकन नेशंस, अगर वो ठीक ठाक रहा, पॉलिटिकल एस्टैब्लिशमेंट बन गया वहां पे, तो उनको भी वही चाहिए होगा जिस जो एक बार गांधी इकोनॉमिक्स बोलते हैं. So therefore यहाँ पे एक रिलेशन बनाया गया है according to this respective mindset of Mikhail Gorbachev alongside Gandhi. ठीक है, तो ये एक एडिटोरियल न्यूज है. ओके, चलो यहाँ पे हम लोग का 5 क्वेश्चन है, अटेम्प्ट कर लेना. ठीक है, 1 मेंस क्वेश्चन. So that's all for today. Thank you and जय हिंद.